on KC101. Time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors. We have Geryl Stabley joining us here in our studios from Wellsboro. And first of all, let me thank our sponsor, Eisenhower's Tioga County Harley-Davidson. Thank you for sponsoring our Saturday with Seniors program here on KC101. When you want a motorcycle, you want friendly people, or you need something for a Christmas gift, stop on by. They got lots of great ideas, including gift cards there. And Geryl, welcome into our studios.
Thank you.
And you are from Wellsboro, correct?
Correct.
And how old are you?
I'll be 91 in a few days.
When is your birthday? By the time this airs, you'll probably will be 91, I'm guessing.
27th.
Yes, you will be 91 by the time this airs. Well, happy early birthday to you.
Thank you.
And belated birthday to those hearing this on the radio. So where were you born?
East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania.
Let's go back a little bit before that. Do you know what your parents or your grandparents did for work? How far back do you know kind of what your family did?
Well, my dad operated a gas station for many years, and my mom made me a coverall to match his outfit that he wore at work.
So when you were a little girl, you'd go to the gas station with your matching outfit?
Yeah.
How cute. And so 91 years ago, what year was that?
1932.
So when you were born, Prohibition was still going on for another year. Not that you remember that, or it probably affected your bottle. Although there wasn't even bottle milk back then. Well, there was, but... So you were raised down there. What was you said what, Stroudsburg?
East Stroudsburg.
East Stroudsburg.
Two different
Not
towns.
the same as Stroudsburg.
It's adjoining, but they're two separate entities.
Okay. What was life like in the early days there that you remember? You went to? Do you remember being a kid there? Were you right in town or in the?
We were right in town. I lived there till third grade when we moved to Jersey Shore.
So what was school like there? Do you remember your earliest days of school?
I had very nice teachers. I enjoyed school.
What do you remember about school? Do you remember? Did you take a bus to school, or how did you get to school in those days?
Oh no, there was no such thing as busing. And we were on the campus of a college at that time.
Uh-huh.
So we had a lot of student teachers, and we took a lot of field trips, a lot of walking trips to farmers and orchards, different places.
And there were still horses on the road in those days, probably more than cars, or about equal. Or you remember when you were a kid, you remember seeing horses, or you ever go for a horse ride?
Once I had my picture taken on a pony where a fellow would go around from house to house and capture the kids on print. And my dad hired a one-horse sleigh once, but that was about the only thing. We weren't a horsey town. It wasn't in the country.
I talked to people who grew up in this area in the 1940s. The Tioga County had about as many horses in town in the early 40s as cars. And about that time period, horses were on the way out and cars were on the way in quite quickly.
No, I don't remember horses at all in town in general.
Mm-hmm. So you were there till third grade, and then why'd your family decide to pick up and move?
My dad grew up in Jersey Shore, and he had an opportunity to get a job there for the water company, or the gas company, I guess at that time. He had worked both, but at any rate, he wanted to go back to his roots.
So went back to Jersey Shore, and how long were you in Jersey Shore for?
Till I was 20 years old when I moved to Corning, New York, and got a job with the Glassworks.
So you lived on one side of Tioga County and then came right through and went to the other side. And you were 20 years old. So before we go to Corning, so let's go back to high school. So you went to high school in Jersey Shore.
Graduated from there in 1950.
And what was school like there in the 1940s? If you graduated in 1950, in the 1940s you did your schooling.
Again, we had good teachers, and it was nothing like school is now. Students got to know one another, and there were no cell phones, so we really had a lot more fellowship with one another.
Yeah.
And kids do now, looking at their cell phones all the time.
I agree with you. That has changed a lot. A lot of other things have changed a lot, too. Did you have TV when you were... No, you wouldn't have had TV in the 1940s.
Jersey Shore started getting it when I was in high school, but it was mostly snow.
Hard to pick up anything. People don't even know what snow means on TV. They're thinking all winter scenes. No. Because you don't have snow anymore. That disappeared 20 years ago.
The only people that had TV wanted to impress others, but they weren't seeing anything.
Did you ever go to any, when you were younger, like music concerts, or did you have a favorite movie star, or, were you a Frank Sinatra fan, or what was your...
The movies, and, growing up, we went to every Saturday to see the serial, find out how the hero got out of the situation he was left in the previous week.
In the serial?
Yeah, that was the way they got you to come back every Saturday.
What was the serial?
It could be Zorro or some cowboy, but mostly always at the end of the episode, he was in some kind of danger.
Yep.
And then they'd quit there, so he had to go back.
The cliffhanger to leave you.
The cliffhanger, and after so many episodes, when they were ending it, they would start a new one the same as the end of the previous one. So again, you were hooked on the next one.
Now, when you say the serial, I'm still a little lost. You mean at the movies, or in a comic book, or what's you referring to?
This is the movies.
The movie theater.
Yeah.
So there'd be a whole series of them that would play.
For instance, Zorro might be left surrounded by the enemy, or maybe he was captured and they were going to torture him or whatever, and we'd have to go back to find out what happened,
And everyone would
how
go.
we got out of it.
You had to get your 10 cents to pay for the movies, probably.
That's what it cost, too.
Was it 10 cents? I was just a guess, but an educated guess at that. So you went to the movies often?
Every Saturday.
Were these silent movies then, or were they talkies?
Oh, come on now. I'm not that old.
Well, it wasn't until there were still silent. I thought until the 1940s there were silent movies, but maybe I'm wrong. No, no, they're all talkies then. Okay.
No.
Color, black and white.
Black and white, yeah.
The Wizard of Oz. Did you see that when it came out?
I saw it when it came out.
That was one of the first huge movies with color, but they only did part of the movie in color. Was so expensive, I believe, was the reason. Mm-hmm. And Judy Garland was quite the thing.
Shirley Temple.
Shirley Temple was
She
the
was
thing.
a big one.
Yeah. Did you watch sports when you were a kid, or follow sports or anything?
They didn't have organized sports in the way they do now. As far as professional sports, no.
The milkman coming to your house and the Iceman.
We did have a milkman. My family had a refrigerator, so we didn't need the Iceman, but they still were around.
Mm-hmm. You were pretty modernized with electricity and all, but you were in
yeah.
the city more. Again, here, half the people I talked to in that time period didn't have electricity. They had outhouses. I'm sure you're familiar with an outhouse, but you're probably plumbing there too, growing up?
Oh, yeah.
So fancy.
We lived in big cities, 5,000 people at least.
Yep. And we're going to talk about your military background coming up, but World War II.
I was in 5th grade.
Tell me about your memories of that when you heard about the war happening. Were you scared? You know, the air raids, the different. What do you remember?
We had blackouts. They would ring the fire alarm, and everybody would turn out all their lights, and they had wardens going around to make sure that nobody had anything on that could be seen from the air. I wasn't frightened. We sang a lot of patriotic songs in school. We had alerts where we had to go out in the hall, get away from the windows, and there again, we spent our time singing, and we kids didn't realize the seriousness of the war.
Yeah, it was a very patriotic time in this country, from what I understand. It's always interesting to talk to someone who was there versus reading it in a history book.
I think this area is the most patriotic I've ever lived in.
I would agree, and if you look back historically, even back to the Civil War, the percentage of people that volunteered to go or enlisted is much higher than the national average. This area has always been very supportive of our country.
I had 3 uncles that all saw active duty.
3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the uncles were World War II? Did they all?
Next, you're going to have me in the Civil War.
No, the uncles are one generation older than you, so they could have been 30 years old, and that would have been, well, okay.
You're probably 2 generations older than me. Younger than me.
So World War II, they come back okay? Were they on active duty?
They all came back, suffered shell shock for a long time, but they came back to a normal life.
So when the war ended, do you remember the celebration?
I remember the sirens going off and church bells ringing and people were rejoicing.
I spoke with someone who was in Mansfield at that time, about your age, and she said everybody came to town and everyone was honking their horns, and the church bells, everyone was ringing, and everyone was making as much noise as they could, and she said it was the biggest celebration that she was ever at. It was big enough that, when she was 10 years old, she still to this day can see it in her eyes.
Yeah, I don't remember anything formal. It's just the people's natural reaction. And they were still suffering, too, the loss of President Roosevelt. He died just before it was over, so.
Polio, the president passed away from?
Well, his health had been poor to start with, and I think he was suffering the results of polio, but I don't think he died of that.
Do you remember hearing the president on the radio when you were a kid? You must have had a radio before the days of TV.
Yeah, for some reason or other, really liked to hear his voice and felt confident in him, even at that age. And in movies, they always had previews before the main feature, and they would show mostly war pictures, but he almost always had a word on the screen itself. I appreciated him.
Wow, remembering hearing Roosevelt, that's so cool.
Now, this is FDR, not Teddy.
Yes. Well, sometimes you ask a little kid and you say, do you think George Washington was alive at the same time as I was? And a 7-year-old has no idea. I guess I feel like a 7-year-old now. Sometimes I'm off 10, 20 years, but we're going back 80 years ago. So what other memories do you have of that time period? Christmas time, what was that like in your house?
Santa came during the night, and my sister and I would get up in the wee hours and go out and open gifts. Mm-hmm. Then Mom would fix breakfast.
Did you grow up in a fairly wealthy family, well-to-do, or was it?
No, my dad was a hard-working man and for the gas company.
Yep, you had mentioned he worked for the gas company. So now kids have 20 pairs of shoes and more clothes than they could fit in the closet, and when they get a little rip in their clothes, they toss them out. It wasn't like that for you, was it?
No, we were conservative.
You had probably how many pairs of shoes when you were a kid? Your Sunday shoes, maybe? Your work shoes and your school shoes?
Sunday shoes and school shoes, and usually the school shoes were we did have to buy sneakers for gym when I finally got to high school, but...
Was it your first pair of sneakers ever when you were in high school?
The ones came up over your ankle.
The old style ones. So you have a big family when you were a kid?
No, just my sister.
Well, I have just one sister, too. A lot of people at that time period, some people had 15 in their family and some had one. It was a big range of number of kids. How about first time you ever left the state? How old were you then? Well, you went to New York when you moved to Corning. Had you ever really gone on vacation anywhere when you were a kid?
I think the farthest I got when I was in high school, I think I was a sophomore when we drove out to Illinois, and that's the farthest I'd been till then. And up in New York State, just across the border.
How long did it take to get to Illinois back then? There were no highways. I imagine, I'm sure you don't remember the details, but it was quite a journey then. Now it's 2 days, at least a really, really long day or 2 days.
We started out early and stopped along the way, and we didn't stay at a motel. We just stopped. My dad would pull over to someplace, and we'd sleep in the car, and he and Mom took turns driving.
And no seatbelts in the back when you were...
Oh, my, no.
No,
none in the front.
They're an option in the front in those days.
I don't even think that we ever heard the term seatbelt.
Things were a little slower and a little relaxed pace back then, so I guess we weren't trying to go 70 miles an hour down the road.
I don't think the car would do it.
No. So what brought you to Illinois? Were you just going on vacation to see the corn, or?
My dad's sister and her family lived there, so my cousins and I got together.
And that must have been an adventure, having never really left home area and getting to see that. So you went to Corning when you were 20 after high school, and you worked for Corning Incorporated. What'd you do there?
Secretarial work.
Tell me about, what were you right in Corning, right in town?
I lived in Painted Post, but you might as well say Corning.
Back then, was everybody, the men were all in suits and the women were in dresses? Was it a more formal time for work?
Very formal.
Corning was quite the company then.
Yeah, it was. They were a nice company to work for, though. I had good employers and good supervisors, and I expected to go back there after I left the service, but that's another whole story.
Yeah. Now, do you know how to do shorthand?
I used to. I'm losing it, but I can still tell you a few letters.
My mom was my dad's secretary. That's how they met. Makes quite a story. But she learned shorthand. I remember she was showing it to me, and it's a lost art. And believe it or not, a lot of schools are not teaching cursive writing even to this day. That's going to be a lost art.
Oh, my, yeah.
Penmanship in school. You remember having to make your letters just perfect and all that?
I wish they had been stricter. We never had specific class in penmanship, and my writing shows it.
I look at when people have handwritten letters, back at 40s, 50s, 60s, the penmanship, even if it wasn't perfect, it was so beautiful, their writing. There was an art to it.
My dad had a beautiful penmanship. My sister got an award for hers, and my mom was even a better writer when she did it slowly. When she wrote fast, then you had to study it.
You remember any stories about working at Corning that are worth sharing? Funny things that happened, interesting things that happened, famous people you met there?
I can't think of anything that stands out. It was just a pleasant place to be. I had nice co-workers.
So you were up there at 20 years old and you had your own apartment then when you moved up there, or did you?
I shared an apartment with a friend who also worked at Corning until she got married, and then I had my own apartment.
What was Corning like then downtown? Now it's all restaurants and tourist things.
They had a store equivalent to our Dunham's and individual shops. It's just a very pleasant shopping area.
Yeah.
Nothing like it is now.
It's still pleasant, but it's definitely changed to cater to visitors more than the people there, so to speak, with that stuff.
The avant-garde clothing I wouldn't wear now.
So you were a secretary there, rotary phones and everything, and there was no fax machines. You had to mail letters, a whole different world. Mm-hmm. So how long did you stay at Corning for?
I was there 6.5 years, and then I joined the service, knowing that I'd have a job waiting for me when I got back.
And did you?
I came back expecting to go there. I had an interview on a Friday and was going to be working Monday, and the Lord impressed on me that I should go out to Scripture Press, a Christian publishing company in Illinois, and I knew nothing about it except the little paper that I used to get every Sunday at church. And 3 years before, they had a note in there they were looking for a secretary. 3 years before, and that popped in my mind, and so I went in Monday and told the lady who had arranged for me to have the position that I was going out to Illinois to work there. I didn't even have a job, but I just knew I was supposed to be there, and I went out with a big trunk knowing that I was staying out there, and it was just so...
It worked.
And it worked. I got there on a Saturday, took the employment test on Monday, and was working on Tuesday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you go to church as a very young kid, right, all the way through? Was church always an important part of your life?
Very much so. And I encountered great chaplains in the service, too.
Mm-hmm. Do you still attend church to this day?
First Baptist.
All right. I'm sure you got a lot of friends at the First Baptist Church. Tell them all to listen in. Let me go back. When you left Corning, you went to the service. Tell me about that. What made you decide to go into the service? I assume you enlisted on your own?
I always wanted to travel, and I never really had the courage to get out and do it. But I had 3 female cousins who were in the service, and they all had good experiences. So I thought, well, I know I have a secure job job here, so if I go in, I still have something to fall back on if I don't like it.
And did you like it?
I liked it, but I didn't feel that I wanted to make a career of it.
Being a woman in the service then, what was that like?
Much better than now. I wish we'd have had more physical training, but I do not like the amalgamation they have now with the men. I think that we are separate entities and that I would not be capable of helping you or somebody heavier out in the battlefield. And I think that women should recognize that we still are different.
Physically, yes, probably, but mentally, I think women are smarter than men, to be honest with you.
Well, I'd have to go along with you with that. No, I think that we each have our own talents that were God-given, and we should appreciate what we have.
That's how my parents raised me, and I see the world has changed some, and everyone's got their own views on that. So what branch of the military did you go in? And tell me about what you did.
The Women's Army Corps.
And where'd you travel to with that?
Basic training in Fort McClellan, Alabama. Went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for my first stint. 5th Army Headquarters, which was a really plush assignment, and I could have spent my whole time there. But when I had an opportunity, I took it to go to Heidelberg, Germany.
Wow. You took a boat to Germany or a plane? How'd you get there?
Plane.
A propeller plane.
Yeah.
Not a jet.
Yeah. Not a jet, and we sat backwards.
So you saw everything behind you out the river. Well, it's not like a car, but wow, that was your first time in a plane, or were you in a plane before that?
I'd been in a plane before, but not for such a long flight because it was quite long. And I forget, we had one stop en route, Nova Scotia, I think, but it was a long flight.
I can imagine that. So how long were you in Germany, you said, right?
I was sent over for 16 months, and I extended for 6 months so I could stay there a little longer.
You voluntarily extended because you enjoyed it. Did you learn to speak any German, or did you just...
9.
No. While you were over there, was there any active duty, or were you just on call in case... I'm not sure where we were in history at that point.
Well, that was during the Cold War.
So there was some scary times, but...
Not really.
No.
No. In fact, I got to see both sides of the wall while it was still up.
Wow. Okay.
We had drills when we'd jump on a truck and go to someplace else, but no, there was no fright at that time. There was no...
Yeah, I mean, they were
danger.
doing air raids in schools. I think at that time, fallout shelters were existing. People were, no, in this country, it seemed like they're, no. Well, you were there. I shouldn't tell you. You should tell me. No, so it was a stable time. And do you have memories over there to talk about? That when you were over there, what were some of the things?
Well, I did a lot of touring, seeing a few other countries. And again, I had a great chaplain. We had a good fellowship group that did things together. We'd get together after services and over the snack bar, go on hikes and go out to eat, and just the things that you do around here.
Yeah, and you got paid to do it.
We got paid to do it. Not very much.
No.
I started out at something like $89 a month and worked up to $230 maybe a month.
Yeah. Was that higher paying than Corning was paying you before that?
Oh my, no. Oh my.
No, but they were covering a lot of your costs of living, so you didn't need as...
I forget what I was getting at Corning, but it was something like $45 a week, which was good.
Yeah.
Paid for my rent.
$45 a week. You hear that, kids? Saying we need $15 an hour. No, 40 a week.
I started out at 45. I take it back. I think I worked up to 70. I worked there from 53 till 59, and it was 37 and a half hours for the office workers. And we had nice working conditions.
Yep. So less than $2 an hour, $1.50 an hour or whatever.
Then as I say, in that period of time, then I was up, I think, to $70 when I left.
Yeah. Wow.
And then worked for $89 a month.
Your rent was probably $15 a month then, I'm guessing, or $20. It probably was a quarter of what you...
I don't even remember, but that sounds
It could have
good.
been half of what you made, because the rent never was half of what your group...
Seems like it was something like $28 for a very small apartment.
Yeah. When you were growing up, people were very thrifty then, I'm going to guess. I mentioned before about now you rip your pants, you just throw them out. Everybody owned a sewing machine, I assume, back in those days.
Yeah, we wore our clothes for the most part till they were pretty ragged.
Yeah, till there was nothing left, and then start over.
I shouldn't say we, I.
You. Well, the community as a whole, I think. I mean, when our shoes broke back then, we didn't throw them out either. Do you remember going to a cobbler ever?
Oh, all the time. And I got my shoes relatively cheap because they always put the smallest ones in the window, and I would get them at a discount when they took them out.
Because they were
my size.
They're your size. That's a neat story. What would bring your shoes to the cobbler? Would the sole fall off, or the replace? I don't know. I know cobblers fix shoes, but I never really understood what they fixed.
The heel would fall off, or the sole would get thin. So they just put another one out. It was a lot cheaper than
Just new shoes on a horse, new...
They didn't charge a lot for their service. They just mostly charged you for the material they use.
The leather they put on, or Wow. So military, you came back after that extension?
And expected to be back at Corning and ended up out at Scripture Press.
Yep. I'll tell you what, we make this into a 2-part piece and we'll talk some more next week? This is great. You're doing great. You've been listening to Saturday with Seniors, brought to you by Eisenhower's, Tioga County Harley-Davidson, South Mansfield on Old Route 15. Don't forget Eisenhower's for your winter storage and ask about their free winter storage option when you spend $899 or more on service, parts, and labor. Also, keep them in mind for your holiday shopping at Eisenhower's, Tioga County Harley-Davidson. And if you're looking to sell your motorcycle, they buy used motorcycles there as well. If you missed any of today's episode, go to our YouTube channel or just search Saturday with Seniors on YouTube, and you will find that we have close to 80 programs on our YouTube channel to watch or listen to that include residents